Hey everyone. Thank you for joining me for another LinkedIn Live. If you're new here, I do these every last Wednesday of the month and occasional second Wednesdays of the month. And so thank you for joining me on the second Wednesday of April. I do these at 10:30 Eastern and I will talk to you for about 15 minutes. I want your questions, and so please feel free to put them in the chat. I will warn you that there's a little bit of delay. I still have not cracked the nut to get them more quickly. So as soon as you think of a question, please feel free to enter it. Um, and so don't worry about, if I'm still talking. These are recorded and you'll be able to find the recording, on my profile. If we're not already connected, please connect with me on LinkedIn and also the Think Beyond IP YouTube channel as well. And occasionally I release them as podcast episodes. I'm still thinking about that. So we'll see how that goes. So I have been doing a series of lives regarding AI, and that's kind of why I've been going twice a month instead of once a month, is really to get through all the questions that you have about AI. And so if it is your first time here, please go to my profile and after we're done here, and look at some of my prior LinkedIn lives where I talked about the copyright infringement issues, ethics issues. But today I wanted to talk to you about AI in productivity tools. I love this. AI is everything, everywhere, all at once. Sometimes I just think I'm so smart. So anyway, that's from the movie, of course. But I keep, a lot of the questions are about, Chat GPT or Claude or, the other generative AI platforms where you go into it and you ask it to produce something and it takes something out for you, ignoring the fact that AI is in pretty much your entire tech stack these days. And if it isn't now, it will be soon, or you may need to rethink your tech stack. So we're going to talk about where it is in the stuff that we're using every day without really thinking about AI. And of course, this is especially important if you are processing confidential information or the information of your clients. So I was asked the question, what's the big deal about, what are the extra risks with using AI as opposed to cloud storage? We've been using cloud storage, we got used to that. There was a time when we had, servers like when I was at a firm many years ago, and you would have the server like in the building with you. And so it was segregated. So all of your data was segregated in your own servers. And then we had these data centers, and then you still had a server, just wasn't on site because you had that ability to encrypt, to when you send it. And now, you might still have a physically segregated server, but oftentimes they're shared, and that there are other ways of segregating the data among the clients of that, the clients of that cloud storage. But that is as far as it's going. It is not being commingled. Even if it's not physically in a separate storage, it is still being separately held, and there's no interaction among each client's data. And so I'd like to use an example to help illustrate this point. And so, speaking of tech stacks, one of the software that I use is Adobe. I think probably most of us use Adobe if, you don't use Google Docs. And so when I used Adobe pre-AI, so I have a document, it's a 100-page document, and I want to search for what are the acceptance and rejection requirements for deliverables. And I would go, and there'd be a little search bar, a little magnifying glass, and I'd put, deliverables. Maybe I'd search deliverables. And then it would show me there's 27 instances of deliverables. And then I could page through it and I could find and read it until I found the provision I was looking for. That was not AI. So that was using cloud storage. So I'm storing my Dropbox where I have my Adobe files is stored and nobody else can get to it. Now, Adobe has an AI assistant, which I do use. And so now I have that same document and I ask AI assistant to read it and to understand it. So now it reads that document and it understands it, and then instead of me paging through, I can ask it, what are the acceptance and rejection requirements for the deliverables? And now it reads and understands using the AI function to now tell me as if I was asking it a question, and it is providing an answer. It's not, it will tell me where the provision is, but it will in plain language tell me that their acceptance and rejection requirements are X, Y, and Z. And that requires the AI processing, and it means that it is using the training that is part of what it does for all of its clients in order to understand how to read that document and understand it in the language that I've chosen. And the question there is, what is happening when it's reading and digesting and understanding that document? And so, is it segregating that still, or is it going into a a into that large model training data so that it can use it to become smarter and be able to respond more efficiently? And any other data, frankly, I mean, there's so much data that um, is stored in all of the content that we use every day. How is it using the information that it learned by digesting and understanding what that agreement actually says so it can respond to me in plain English what is happening with that new understanding that it has? And that's the difference between cloud storage, where all it's doing is searching for the letters, in deliverables, and where do those letters also appear elsewhere in the document, versus digesting and understanding that entire document. And where is that learning being stored? And that's why we care about the AI functions in the tools that we've been using for years, if not decades in some cases. So lots of tools. I mean, if we think about our tech stacks, excuse me, I've mentioned Adobe, I use Zoom. We know that there's AI Companion was added recently. I happen to use ClickUp. There was an AI assistant that was added to ClickUp. Um, Microsoft, who hasn't been tortured by Copilot? Sometimes these new tools are welcome and sometimes they aren't. But what you will find, but in any case, you will get that email, oh, we have this new function feature. It's going to be great. It's going to do all these things for you now. And you're excited about it. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't tell you what the new fine print will be. It doesn't tell you what the changes in the terms of service are. And if you've ever read terms of service, and don't be ashamed if you haven't, many of us don't, it will say, we can revise these terms at any time, and they are binding, basically, being effective. That means they're binding on you, when I revise them. And don't forget, those terms of service are a legally binding contract. It's been tested. If you are, sometimes they require you to affirmatively, like, click I accept. Mostly when we're creating accounts, certainly if you're paying, but even free accounts where you're providing contact information, creating an account, you're getting a login. you are accepting the terms of use, legal binding agreement. And if it says that we can revise it, it can be legally binding, right? So we want to know that when we get new functions, there's probably some new terms that we need to be aware of as well. And those would deal with how they're going to use the content that before was completely segregated. If we go to ClickUp as the example, now I've not used the AI functions in ClickUp, but I do have client data in there. Before completely segregated. Now, if I somehow use that and use their AI functions, like how does that change how they're using and processing that data? And the number of risks, I mean, that data is gold. I mean, I think it might be platinum, right? We all know that. We know how important data is in every part of business and even in our private lives, right? And if we if we go back to, Cambridge Analytics and what Facebook has been doing with data, I mean, we know that that's where the value is. We know how important data is. And now that every app that you use has access to harvesting more data from you through the AI function, they most certainly will. And there are risks to that, obviously, you know, um, just minding your content. Um, you know, one of the beauties of something like a chat GBT is that it gets to know you and it understands how you write and it understands your business, if you're using it enough, and have the full function turned on. That is the pro and the con, right? Um, Of course, when you're using something, if it's part of the content that it consumes, the data that it consumes, if it is going into a common training data set, then third parties have access to it. The other clients have access to it. And, competitive data being exposed or confidential data. As a lawyer, it was reminding me of a contract review AI tool that I used to use. I'm not using it now because I didn't find it as helpful as I wanted it to be. But basically, it was what is it called? It's not called an app, but an add-on. I don't know what the term is in Word. So the documents open in Word and it would run and it would make a bunch of suggested revisions to the agreement. It was like a contract review app. And for me, as a lawyer, one, I mean, it very much assured you because I went through the whole sales process with the sales team. Absolutely. We're not using his training data. Everything's going to be held confidential. But as it was recommended for lawyers, that we not have clients' contact information, that all be scrubbed before we put it use the app with it. But I found that even though it made all these suggestions, I then had to review the suggestions. So it depends on which we will talk about later, like when is it appropriate, when is it not appropriate. But that could have been, that was an agreement. At the end of the day, without the names of the parties, wasn't that interesting. But if it's something that is, about plans for the future and you're using it, and that's going into a tool that is now part of the training data for that tool, that's a much bigger deal, right? So we need to make sure we're mindful of that. And so this is an example of what we want to see. So if you receive an email from a platform that says, hey, we have a new AI assistant and you should use it, I want you to look at the terms. And so this is sample terms that I was just looking at yesterday, so just in time for today, where Sonics does transcription services, kind of like Otter, but for professionals, so for lawyers and accountants, people who handle confidential data. And so they've been a transcription and translation service. So, they keep you, you upload your files and obviously they keep everything confidential. Great. You didn't use AI to make transcripts and do translations, but it had this kind of general other analysis, related services, very broad. What does that mean? So if someone says that they're now providing AI services or AI training, you need to see specific language. If you don't see specific language that addresses how the AI function is using your data, my recommendation is to not use the tool. You want to know. Now, it may be that they're doing this, but this is the agreement, is what is in those terms of use. In this case, for Sonics, they had a separate AI security policy that had this language that, you know, told us as the user that it remains strictly confidential. It's not used in any way for training their systems. That's what you want. You want to make sure that any of your inputs are staying segregated as if it was in its own separate server and not into some big communal server that is being used, that can be used by other people. So what can you do? We want to make sure that we are reviewing our terms of use. So this is at the front end, when you're looking at a new tool. Let's look at Gamma. I mean, you can see here, you might have noticed if you've been around that these slides look a little bit different. I'm trying a new AI tool, and Gamma is a presentation. It creates your slides. So instead of like me writing out my slides in Word and sending them over to Stacy and Stacy putting them in, Google Slides, and then me putting them in PowerPoint because I don't know how to use Google Slides. It can be uploaded in and they can create the slides, and they created these images that you've seen here. That's why you see different images. So when you're looking at new tools, which you should be, just make sure that you're reviewing the terms of use so you know what it's going to say. If there are things that you want to opt out of, then see if that's a possibility. Now, will opting out affect functionality? Absolutely. For ChatGPT, originally I'm like, oh, do I want it to like use all my stuff? And I opted out, and then it didn't remember me. It didn't grow and get to know me better. It didn't learn my writing style. And so now, after this live, the transcript from this will go into chat, and chat will turn it into social media posts, right? And because it knows me, it knows how to create social media posts out of my content. And so that's the benefit of, getting the full function. But would I do that with, confidential information? Absolutely not. I do it with stuff that's already public. And making sure, when you're done with something that you're able to get it out of there. That's not always possible. Again, that's why you want to make sure you read your terms. And then as you continue to use it and new functionality is added, make sure you are paying attention to those updates. It's kind of boring when you get that email that says we've added this cool new function to then go, well, but what do the terms say? But that would be the responsible thing to do. And so that brings us to what this is really, what the big picture. So the big picture is that whenever we're using AI, it's not about not using AI. It's in all of our tech stack probably. And there are valuable efficiencies that you can get from using AI functions, but we need to be making informed decisions. And so that's where an AI usage policy comes in. I encourage all of you to make sure you understand, am I using something to create social media posts, which are public anyway? I'm not as concerned. Am I using it to analyze a client's confidential information? Very concerned. So knowing which tools to use, when to use them, what functions to use. There may be some tools that have AI function, but you choose not to use it because adding that functionality um, brings risks with it. So it's not that you don't use, Adobe, although Adobe does segregate the information. Um, but there may be others that you're using that the old-fashioned way you used it, it's fine, but this newfangled way is not fine. But you need to make sure that you understand that so that going forward, you understand everything that's happening in your tech stack, the things that you need, how to evaluate a new tool when you want to use it, so that you can, use it confidently. So to that end, I have developed, and I realize this is one of the things that happens when you go from Google Docs to PowerPoint, is sometimes things fall off the page, and a very important part of this page fell off, and I didn't notice it until 30 seconds before going live. But basically, so the big announcement is that I have created a masterclass where we talk about all the things I've been talking about: copyright infringement, how AI will use your information, how to protect yourself, how to read and understand terms of use, how to make sure you're staying in compliance with your client obligations. It's not just about the terms of use, but also those client contracts, whether or not they have explicit language in there about AI usage. There are still provisions in most corporate contracts that govern how you can use their data with AI. And finally, to come out of it with an AI usage policy to cover the things that we've discussed. So there is a wait list. For the first cohort, it will definitely be within, if not within May. I'm almost positive it will be in May, and I'm going to finalize those dates. And what is missing from here is the link to sign up for the wait list. And then as soon as that, I wonder if I can do, I think I can do this. Am I allowed to comment on my own? I'm not. I'm not allowed to comment on my own thing. So it is thinkbeyondip.com/AI workshop AI workshop. That's it. And so, but I'll also have it, I'll put it in the comments to this video. And I need to update my profile, my LinkedIn profile, and it will be there as well. And of course, if you're connected with me, just ask me and I'll send you the wait list. The first cohort's going to be small because I want to make sure that get lots of attention and make sure everything works the way I want it to. So anyone on the wait list will have first dibs to sign up when that goes live. Yeah. So that was it for today. Let me make sure I don't have any comments. And of course, please again connect with me if you have any questions. Thanks for joining me.